Welcome to Agility Lab. My name is Morten Elvang, and this is actually the final meetup of the year 2025 in the series State of Agile. And Vladimir, we met online. We actually never met before today because you commented on a post I had on LinkedIn where I talked about work topologies, and you suggested that your work could really offer something in that context. So we agreed to set up this meetup for you to get a chance to talk about your work and the rest of us to discuss it with you. So I'm really looking forward to that. Please.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thank you for inviting me, and I feel kind of privileged to have the chance to be here at a final meetup before the end of the year. So I hope this closure will be nice enough, and I will do everything for that so that you guys can profit the best way out of this discussion. First of all, I will try to fill those 30 minutes with content, inviting you to new ideas about work topologies. And then we will discuss your points. So please make sure to even interrupt me at some point where you think you need some clarification. If you have some deep points to discuss, maybe you can save them for the second half so that we have a nice discussion after.
Yeah, let's do it like that. Your presentation first, and then we discuss.
Okay, great. Yes, and talking about presentation, yes, I have some. I'm bringing something with me, and this is it. So basically, what I have learned from the other meetups and presentations until today is that talking about the right people framework, which is basically the subject I'm gonna talk about today, um, is the best way to put the message through is to talk about some real example of how it's implemented. So that's why I'm bringing with me a real life example of implementation of this framework at some real organization back in Switzerland. We have quite some number of those implementations, but I decided for this one because I think on this example, it's the best way to grasp what the framework really provides. I'm going to talk about so-called Schweizerische Mobiliar. That's a Swiss insurance company, quite 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 known, quite famous back in Switzerland. And as you probably know, insurance companies are basically digitalized powerhouses, so they're full of IT, full of applications, full of calculations and probabilities and whatever. So this organization is a big organization which employs quite many people. They have scaled agile framework in place with many arts, with even more teams. So it's a kind of big number. And the guys from Mobiliar approached me with a very simple question and told me, look, we have this scaled agile framework at place. We are doing quite well and we are quite proud of it. And everything's fine, but we would like to put on some speed because we believe we could be even faster in a way that we deliver. And this was basically the primary inquiry. What happened after, I will show you next. We are talking about time of February 2 years ago, nearly 2 years ago. So what I'm talking about is, or that has been 2 years in place. So it's not like we have deployed it like 2 weeks ago and we have no idea if it works or not. Okay, so this is the statement from the guy who is running one of those Agile release trains. This format has replaced conventional meetings and accelerated our decision-making process substantially. What does that mean? I will show you on the next slides. First of all, we are talking about so-called feature refinement or feature flow. Probably you guys are familiar with that one. The Schedule framework talks about features. It's something above story and not yet epic level about its planning intervals. And the feature refinement is the process or the activity of clarifying features as a prerequisite for delivery, right? And this is quite a big thing because you can imagine if you are kind of slow in this activity in doing refinement, then your delivery will be even slower. So this is kind of a typical bottleneck in big organizations because so once you try to do a refinement at scale, that means you have not one, not two teams, but maybe 20 teams kind of involved. Then you find out that this process is very, very, very difficult to organize. And I will talk about it a little more in the next slide. So we are talking about Scale Agile framework. So those are those roles you probably know already. So product manager, release train engineers, system architect, product owner, scrum master, and so on and so forth. Basically, in the scope of this implementation, we are talking about 150 people. The number is growing, and they have different roles. So we have many teams, many POs, many Scrum Masters, many product managers, many architects, some RTEs, business owners, epic owners, and all kinds of roles you can imagine. The point is that the flow is pretty much driven by the velocity of this refinement, right? And the situation is this: you can picture the situation in a very easy way. If there's some idea to do some like some feature on the horizon or the insurance company, then you have a guy who is probably somebody in charge of some epic, and inside of this epic, this idea came up, and then he's gonna talk to product management probably. So yeah, they have some conversation and they think, okay, let's take it further. And they are talking maybe a few weeks later to a system architect because it doesn't have that much time, so it's quite a scarce resource. So I was talking to him, and he said, "Okay, that's a great idea. Let's talk about this a little more." So at that time point, like 4 weeks just went over. So we're like 4 weeks after the idea emerged somewhere. And then they're talking to a product owner maybe, and then they're talking again with product management, and it's like a ping pong and back and forth, and they're trying to grasp the idea to make it more clear, more crispy. And maybe like after 5 or 6 weeks, they are talking to technical guys, right? Technical guys we look at them and say, look, this idea is just that's nonsense, right? That it logically doesn't work. We know because we are technical guys. We absolutely know how the algorithm works in this company, and we know quite everything about that logic. And what we are talking about is just not really feasible, even not logical. And by the way, we have something similar already implemented. And this is like, it's like maybe week 8. So 2 months are just over. And a lot of people have been talking to each other. And at the end, they realize, well, if we have talked to this one, Peter, at day one, as the idea emerged, then we had saved a lot of money and a lot of time. But how the hell do we know where the Peter is in a in a specific context? So this is the problematic. This is the thing, and this leads us to the challenge, which is typically the one in scaled environment when it comes to refinement. So if as we all know, the devil lies in often wrong assumptions. So the guys who would have assumed that that idea is so good and there is so much great customer experience, so much money flying in, so great product. And at the end, their assumptions were just plain wrong because they didn't have that knowledge about technical um, feasibility and that logic that the company already runs. Yes, and the other one is to make quick and well-founded decisions, right? So how to decide quickly. If you don't have that knowledge, you have to postpone decisions on and on. That's the problem. And last but not least, we have this siloed thinking, which typically sneaks in um, as you try to accelerate, right? So you are somewhere in the organization, you are sitting there, you try to accelerate. So what you're doing basically is you try to local optimize what you're doing so that you move faster. Okay? This is where the siloed thinking comes from. And now this was the challenge of that client. And well, what typically organizations do if they find out that there are kind of difficulties or barriers in communication, they will typically restructure. That's the response number one. That's the primary response of a typical organization. Let's restructure. Our team structure is not good enough because we have too many dependencies. We need to have a different one, a more popular one. We have to have some value streams, right? Or something like that. And I'm old enough to know that we came through many different organization forms. We used to fall in love with functional organizations. Then we used to fall in love with process-oriented organizations. Then we invented metrics. And even, even that was not enough. We invented a multi-dimensional matrix. So you need crazy forms. And all of them kind of really failed the purpose. Why? Because once we thought we have this perfect cut found, what happened is the reality. So the reality came and told us, no, look, I have something different for you. So your team topology is just not fitting the purpose of the market, of the backlog the market wants from you. So back to restructuring, we do it again because we haven't found the perfect fit yet, which is a wrong way of thinking. And this is where I try to invite you to a completely new world. In this new world, we are not we're not going to restructure. We are not going to look or search for this holy grail of organizational cut because there is not such a thing. But what we do is we will try to involve teams earlier in order to reduce the broken assumptions. This is called shift left already, or some buzzwords just to use them. What we also do, we try to empower teams so that we make some more decisioning going on. And we're gonna rely on open space technology instead of structures, teams and streams and whatever, in order to create a sense of community and less silos, in order to involve many different roles and people and teams more efficiently. So this is basically the cocktail we applied to this client. But how? How can we do those? This like those points are probably kind of logical, kind of well, sure, this is the way. But how you do that? What I will present you right now is a solution called the Right People Framework. This framework is 8 years old. The birth of the framework gave a big project 8 years ago, which went off track, and it was a big one. Big one meaning like over 30 million Swiss francs in total invest, and we try to kind of bring it back on track. And we used what we today call right people framework back then. So it's not a new thing, it's a quite an old thing, but now it's an it became a product in a sense of you can read about it, you can talk about it, You can apply it. It's plays under Creative Commons, so there's nothing to pay. And it's basically something which came from two worlds, the world of Scrum and the world of open space technology. If you borrow some dedicated stuff from Scrum and some dedicated stuff from open space technology and mix it together, you arrive at right. What does that mean? It means this is the right framework, the right people framework, and I'll plainly show you how it works and then demonstrate how it works at that client. So basically, it's a something which is working in loops, and it starts in the left corner with invitation. That means the host would invite to these loops. What does that mean? That means that if we have the case of refinement, then you can imagine or picture this like this. On one hand, you have this delivery backlog, and inside of your delivery backlog, you have your features and stories, right? Epics, all that stuff we know from Agile as it used to be until now. But as you probably also know, in the reality, after each story, after each feature, there are many, many, many little topics you have to clarify in order to implement that stuff. And as the organization grows, this number explodes, really, because there's so much stuff to talk about until the story finally goes into pipeline and into production. So let's talk about these little topics. You need to clarify to have these stories done, and let's place them in a separate backlog, in a so-called topic backlog. So on the one hand, you have delivery backlog. On the other hand, you have topic backlog. Topic backlog is a little bigger than the delivery backlog, of course, because as I told you, a single story have many topics, eventually many topics you need to clarify, and many of those are cross-cutting. That means you cannot clarify it with your teammate inside of your team. Especially bigger organizations soon realize that they need to talk across many teams and across many levels to have a profound decisions going on. Of course, if you don't do that, you have some assumption and you try to implement something, and that's just a complete waste because it was wrongly founded. The story can go back to the backlog. You have some rework. You have a lot of tensions out of that, interpersonal tensions, all that kind of stuff. So what you would do here is to have this topic backlog open for everybody inside of that organization. And as the people run into those questions, they would place those topics into a topic backlog and say, well, it would be great if I know this. It would be cool if somebody clarified for me that. And what happens with this topic backlog, it will be checked for quality. That means the quality of those questions, of those topics, is checked centrally by the host against definition of ready. So the organization would formulate which quality has a topic or needs a topic to have in order to be really handled by this framework, by these loops. Because there are some topics which are well formed, very well formulated, so you know what the problem is. It's kind of prepared and everything. And there are different topics which are fuzzy, which are even maybe off topic, which are just keeping your organization busy for no reason. So you want to have this check being done before it occupies your organization on. So after this check, we have only those topics which are well formed, which are relevant, small enough, crispy enough, and they enter so-called ripe sprint. Ripe sprint is nothing than a unconference with a little flavor inside. Unconference meaning that you have all those people gathering together and trying to have a conversation on different topics, not all of them together, but of course split um, among among those topics on principle of law of 2 feet, right? So you set up your agenda for the day. You make sure that there are no term collisions between those sessions, and then the law of 2 feet will make sure that the right people gather around the right topics in the right sessions during the day. So this is what you do. Basically, you will find out that, or you will realize that the people just follow their interest and they will join in by the sessions where they can learn something and where they can or want to contribute something. So you have always the right people in there. Why you have always the right people? Because the whole organization gathers on that day, entire organization. Each and every team member, each and every level, everybody out of that Agile is trained, plus key stakeholders. So that means you can immediately make decisions during your sessions. You don't have to wait for anything because all that knowledge is at the table. And at the end of the day, by checkout time, you would only inform or communicate decisions which have been taken through the course of the RIPE sprint on that day. That's it. What does that mean in real world of this company? What they do, they're holding this loop each and every week on Thursdays. Thursdays. What they also do, and this is a very important one, they discontinued all meetings and or things and or ad hoc meetings, everything which has to do with refinement at scale. So from a particular day on, these meetings cannot be or mustn't be invited for, and nobody will accept such an invitation. So everything is transformed or transferred under this governance. That means from that day on, your agenda, your Outlook agenda would just, it becomes kind of empty because nobody would invite you for a meeting for refinement, right? There's no such a thing. And you have at last you have some room to think about. You can do some deep thinking, right? You are not hopping from one meeting to the other, right? So you are you are master of your time. So this is what they do. They do it in a weekly base. They have they call it sprints. That means each and every week is a one sprint. Now you see probably the similarity to Scrum framework. You have a topic backlog, you have definition of ready of topics, you have a sprint, which is basically that interaction day where all this magic happens with unconference format. And yes, you have this time boxing and everything. They gather like 150 people, maybe more in the meantime, every week. And maybe you ask yourself right now, well, that has to be quite an expensive meeting, right? 150 people. That's a lot, week by week. No, it's not. Why? Because the day begins with a check-in. And everybody's inside, of course, is 150 souls are listening in hybrid modus. And this is the time slot where all those topics, which are piling up from that day, are being pitched. So topic owners would pitch their topics, explain why it's important and what they want to achieve. This goes like 20 minutes. And then if you want to attend some sessions to process those topics, then there's a law of 2 feet. So you can go there, you can stay away. So basically, it could be that you attend one single session on that day. That's it. And the rest of the time is spent with some great stuff, deep thinking, whatever. And then you first join in at the checkout time where all those decisions will be communicated from the rest of the day. So what they have in real, they have 4 tracks and 4 time slots, beginning somewhere at 9 o'clock in the morning and ending at 16 or 4 o'clock p.m. And that means they have a place for 16 sessions on the day if you use all the slots and all the tracks at full, which they do. And they have also a so-called short track for sessions which are smaller in challenge. That means a session is in 20 minutes over. You don't need those full 50 minutes to process that. So basically, they are in a position to process quite a lot of topics. And if I talk about processing, I mean decide upon a lot of topics, week by week. This is the agreement which is in place and in charge. I will maybe mention 2 out of those. One of them is all of that is voluntary. That means you are there's no imposing, right? You follow really the principle of 2 feet. But if you freely decide not to join in some session, then you accept all decision thereof. Okay? So this is kind of uh, double. Sagt man that? How you call this? This is kind of a trade-off. So am I going to go in there? I'm going to shape the decision. I'm going to join in, or should I or shall I have trust in those attendees of that session? And yes, what else? What else? The other thing is they're also very clear about which kind of topics may enter the topic backlog, right? So they wouldn't discuss anything different from feature refinement stuff, which is cross-cutting. Good. Each session is last less than 50 minutes. It's moderated, has a minimum goal. So everything which happens is quite small, quite well prepared. So that's why, and probably that's the very reason why they have such a success rate. So success rate of this company is 90%. What I mean by that is if you would have 10 sessions on the day you are running, then 9 of those 10 sessions you will have a successful achievement of the outcome of the session, right? Which is fantastic, right? If you look at the success rate of typical meeting and a typical organization, at least in those I know about, and you are talking about success rates of like 20, maybe 10% from different reasons. So this is a kind of quite high. This is why they say, okay, this is great. I will skip that one, come to this one. This is great because they have started to make decisions at a very, very high pace. So while the if the decision took maybe like 3 or 4 or 5 weeks before, now it takes a single week, right? Because the topic comes in the backlog. You can be pretty sure that this is going to be decided upon in the next week because you have the right people in there. So you don't have to look for a time slot working for everybody, which is a kind of a nightmare. You don't have to. You have all that knowledge in the room. So there's also no excuses anymore. There's no excuses like telling, well, we couldn't decide because no, 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 no. You are all there. All the all the wisdom, all the knowledge was on the table. So why the heck you wouldn't have decided? Yes. So this is what the client told me after all. Um, he they try to compare it to these two traffic regulation principles. On the left-hand side, you have this traffic lights, right? On the right-hand side, there's a roundabout. And they told me we moved from traffic lights to roundabout. This is great. Why? Because before we had like these batches, like we have like big batch, a lot of stuff which needed to be cleared out, and this is also this kind of PI planning kind of thinking, yeah. Like you stand or you hold it on the traffic lights, you do the thinking, and then you let go and you do the delivery, right? Which is completely mistaken because after like 2 meters of driving away from a traffic light, the world turned again. We are living in a small, in a very fast changing world. And he told me now we are more roundabout. Why? Right? Because we don't have this stop and go anymore. We are talking to each other week by week, so it feels very fluid. It feels like, we don't have this barrier. We don't have to stop at all. We are just flowing through, which is great. This is the last slide. Again, they replaced their conventional meeting structure completely in favor of this new governance based on loops, based of open space technology, based on topic backlog on definition already. And little more tricks, of course, I couldn't have covered because we don't have that much time. And that was a cool thing to do. Yeah, that was what I wanted to present just to start a discussion. And now I'm
Thank
very,
you.
very curious about your questions.
No, absolutely. So Vladimir, just to get a few things right, how and maybe you mentioned it. How often do you have like the big loop? I mean, what's the so the safe PI thing is typically like a 3 month quarterly thing.
Okay, okay.
What's the sort of what is sort of the big loop
Th
that
this
you have in
loop,
mind?
this loop is happening weekly.
Weekly loop. Okay. So you would have like the open session with everyone present every week.
Yes.
Makes sense. And then this is very much about the refinement.
Mhm.
So then for the actual delivery, how is that? Is that
Yeah, that's a
following
that's a great
Scrum or
question. That's a great question. What a client has found out that some questions come up during refinement, and they will be clarified in this
Mhm.
loop. But many and many of those questions first come up as the delivery advances.
Yeah, yes, of
That
course.
means
Yeah.
they take it also in the same loop. So each and
Yeah.
every time a developer would kind of get stuck, he knows that at latest 7 days from there on, he's got his answer.
Okay. 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 So you can say because you mentioned I think it's not so visible from the picture, but you mentioned that you have like a topic backlog and a refined backlog.
Mhm.
So that means that in the loop you also deal with the refined part of the backlog.
Yes, indeed. So if you have a top, this is a topic backlog, right?
Yeah.
And the topics are the topic enter the ripe sprint over this
Yeah.
definition already. And we have this
Yeah.
host. Host is central role,
Yeah.
one guy or two
Yeah.
guys who are checking for those topics which are
Yeah.
flying in.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Um, cool. I was also there's a technique or an approach called fast by Quentin Cartel. I don't know if you have heard about that.
Not yet, not yet.
Fast. Okay, because it what fascinated me without understanding the details is that it looks like you are very much focused on the upstream part, where they actually have a much focus on the downstream part.
Mhm.
So it seemed like a good fit. But let's not explore this here. But I found that fascinating, so I'll make sure. I put you in contact.
Oh, that was great. Thank you.
Let's open it up. Tom, you joined a little bit late. Maybe you want to say hi.
Hi.
Hello.
So, Vladimir, have you ever read anything I have written?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Look in your inbox, maybe your junk mail, but I sent you some things.
Great. Great.
Okay.
Yes, there's something. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Well, thank me afterwards. Maybe you say this is just annoying. It's too difficult or something.
Yeah.
But I sent
Well,
it in.
yeah. So Tom, maybe you want to open up a little bit how your work relates to this, if it's okay.
Yeah. In short, I'm trying to. The keyword is engineering, and you mentioned metrics, and you mentioned multiple metrics earlier. So I sent you my 1976 book, Software Metrics.
Mhm.
I invented it. So I believe very strongly that for at least large and complex systems, you have to do the engineering, as with everything. If you're doing very small systems, but you are clearly in an environment with 150 people, so that's large systems, complex. So I believe that your system would probably benefit from more metrics, but you didn't mention much about it. So maybe you'd like to comment the degree to which, for example, you quantify qualities, yes or no?
Okay. 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 Let me find the right words. I what I believe that I have mentioned is metrics as a like
Oh, matrix.
a grid
Matrix, not metric.
yes, matrix indeed.
Right,
So
right,
this is what I found like a pretty poor form of organizing for complexity. But
right.
metrics, that's a whole different story.
Yes,
And
I misunderstood. It's matrix and metrics.
indeed, indeed.
Well,
Okay, so
I, I heard the same at that time, Tom, but it
And
was clearly a
let
matrix organization.
let me tell you about metrics. Metrics. Um, what what the organizations typically lack is a metric numbers about how they decisioning process perform. This is what they typically don't know. So they would told me, well, we are very slow in decision making. It's really kind of difficult, but they don't have any kind of number that would represent it. If you don't have that number, then it's kind of difficult to get a grip of that. And I tell them typically, okay, look, what if you have like a a declaration of how many decisions do you need in a or during a period of time, and how many of decisions did you take during the same period of time? How about that? Like you need to decide upon 50 issues and you decided upon 12 during a week or during a month. This is something which would help you to know how much upside potential do you have. So how good are you organized for decision making, right? And they're telling me, yes, that would be great. And once they apply right people framework, they have these numbers instantly because the number of backlog items in a topic backlog is the number of decisions they need. And this number can be tracked from week to week. So all of a sudden, your decision-making process can be articulated in numbers. Sometimes these numbers are scary numbers, but that's the point.
okay,
Yeah,
good to
sorry.
hear. There's something there. I put something in the chat about matrix.
Hmm?
Yeah, I heard lately, I don't remember who said it, that usually the backlog is just full of information, which are there just because the information doesn't make some output from it. Yeah, so that's similar ideology, I would say, like with this topic, like backlog. And the second thing, what I remembered, uh, metrics, how to measure in team, the understanding, how to be like less surprised when it's done. Yeah, how we understand in developing the thing. Yeah, that's interesting too. It was interesting to me too, yeah, because nobody likes the surprises. So yeah.
I have a client which is operating internationally, quite around the world. It's like 25 sites, and that they are from pharma industry, so medical stuff. And their problem was that their quality assurance department, global quality assurance department, um, was they needed more reliability in dealing with quality issues. And in medical industry, quality issues, that's their life, right? That's the absolute, that's the backbone of the company. And they are applying right people framework also for the reason of having this reliability of we are going to address this quality issue, and not maybe in 1 month, but definitely in 1 week. So if there's some issue out of operations telling that we have this quality issue on the table, and it's a kind of existential issue, right? Then it's guaranteed that uh, that these operations will get informed and clarified with a profound answer at latest in 1 week time, just because all those sites, all those quality assurance sites, get together weekly in these loops, and they handle all those issues together in order to have that clarity for operations on very short notice. And this helped them a lot to have these surprises less.
So, Vladimir, the obvious question to ask these days is how does this gel with generative artificial intelligence? How how uh, how have you already started experimenting with that technology? Is it gonna somehow fundamentally change any of the patterns that you have been developing?
Mhm. Okay. Frankly, I haven't done any research or any concrete steps towards applying artificial intelligence yet.
Mhm.
What I'm thinking of is very straightforward case. If as you if you picture a topic backlog of a company where everybody from that company is invited to submit topic of his or her concern,
Mhm.
and try to imagine that you've been using this topic backlog for, I don't know, 6 months. So inside you have like 1,000 on 1,000 of topics which kept the organization busy in a way that it couldn't be resolved locally in a team, but it was like cross-cutting issue. And imagine that you ask your AI engine, tell me what's the problem of this company? Tell me about our company. Tell me what's the problem. Tell me how we can get the right solutions for the barriers we are facing day in, day out. And the AI would know, because AI knows all the topics they have asked. And since these topics has to have some quality criteria at input, it's a high quality input for an artificial intelligence engine to tell me about my company. See the point?
Yes.
So this one I'm saving for later because I'm pretty sure the time comes where exactly this use case is gonna come, and I'm so excited about to know what happens next because you have then a consultant called AI or your consultant GPT, right? Who looks at what keeps your organization busy for the last 6, 7 months and tells you, okay, this is going on and this is the way to move forward
Yeah.
in seconds, right?
So I'm seeing some of the same things, which where I think the consequence would actually be that you would eventually move away from cadence planning, which is a bit what you are talking to, but you would
Absolutely.
still actually also to a point that you're making, you would still need some cadence for conversations to make. We actually spoke a bit about it before we started the recording. So you would need to make up your mind where to invest your time, given all the options that you have.
Indeed.
So
Mhm.
it would be much more about setting the direction than figuring out how to get there. Whereas today's paradigm around management and leadership is very much around, given the direction, how do we get there?
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
think that's going to be like a fundamental shift,
Mhm.
which would also change a few things in the RIPE model.
You are pointing at a very, very crucial issue or topic or paradigm. And what I if I wanted to express that, I would tell that if you everybody is like fan of decentralized decision making, right? So everybody talks about that. Like we need to decentralize. That's the answer. That's the answer. And if you take a closer look at that, then if you have this divide and conquer kind of thinking in your organization, where the people at the top set the direction, the people at the button would follow, and then you just cannot have any kind of decentralized decision making. It's just not possible. But now there's a little paradox. The paradox goes like, if you want truly decentralize your decision making, then you have to centralize. And what I mean by that, you need to centralize the right thing. You don't need to centralize the decision making, but you have to centralize the process which is fueling or enabling this decentralized decision making. That means you need a topic backlog. You need a definition ready. That must be centrally driven, centrally governed. And that's the biggest failure, I think, and I'm convinced, of a conventional governance, that they say we decentralize all those meetings and everybody's invited to invite anybody, anyone at any time for anything. And there's this complete misconception of
Yeah. Yeah.
imposing something on somebody else by inviting him or her to a meeting is totally broken. It's sick.
But I think you touch on a number of really important points. One is that you often have this like fake delegation, meaning that you are delegated something where you actually lack the means to make the choices that you have to do. However, I think there's also a constructive way out of that. When John Cutler spoke in the Agile Strategy Meetup group, maybe 6 months ago, he used a word that he calls choice space. And
Mhm.
the way I read his term was that it's the space in which you can make meaningful choices. So, and what is a meaningful choice? A meaningful choice is a choice that you can actually act on. Whereas a meaningless choice is a choice that you either choose and nobody will do anything, or you choose and you are not able to do it in a sense. but there is a sweet spot for this. And I think that's literally back to where we met on the work topologies, meaning that what's like a useful configuration of work where
Mhm.
people working the work can make meaningful choices around their
Yeah.
particular piece of work
Mhm,
without
mhm.
constant interruptions. Essentially, the agile dream of the perfectly standardized, flowable backlog, in a sense,
That's the
which
agile
again
dream.
point back to the structure of the work.
If you
Uh,
if you have a closer look at this and you try to imagine how this organization changes from week to week,
yeah,
you will realize that the whole organization, given the law of 2 feet, given the topic
yeah,
backlog and
yeah,
this kind of
yeah,
governance, will
yeah,
change in its form entirely
yeah. No, I
every
see it.
single week. You know, that
Yes. Yeah,
the organigram will completely
yeah, yeah,
be different. And
yeah,
the the question is, what's driving the shape of the organigram? What's driving the shape of the structure in that special week? Well, the topic backlog, of course, because given there are different topics, you have different
yeah,
groupings of people.
yeah,
Okay. And what's
yeah,
driving the content of topic backlog? Well, delivery backlog, right? Because you want to have some topics cleared in order to deliver. And what is driving the delivery backlog? Well, the market, right? Market demand wants something from you. And now you
yeah,
make a closure. If you make the closure, you realize that
yeah,
the market is driving your organizational structure,
yeah.
which is the wet dream of organizational development, isn't it?
Well, in my book, there's one element missing, which is what I would call strategy, because the
Mhm,
strategy has two, in a sense, organizational purposes. One is that it serves in an integrating role, in that you integrate around delivering the strategy, but it
mhm,
also has a generative function, which means that it's shaping market demand as it's delivering.
mhm.
So I'm actually not a big fan of the customer. The customer is always right. Of course, the customer is always right, so that's not what I mean. But I think you can influence the demand by influencing the context of the business, which
Mhm.
is how the really clever people do strategy.
Oh, yes.
And it's a
Mhm,
bit like that as you explore the future, it will unfold, and there will be different options. But the way that you interact with the situation will determine the choice of the future. So that literally means that you can actually influence the needs of your customers. Favorite example, I mean, they might ask for faster horses, but if you give them a car, they will be even more happy. So I
Indeed.
think that's actually the role of the generative role of the strategy, to see
Mhm,
those shifts, and that opportunity.
mhm.
But what I
Absolutely.
really like with what you're doing is that and that's actually the same for all self-organizing approaches, is that they are somehow evolving around the work or the problems that they are trying to solve. So I think you capture that really well, which is pretty cool.
Thank you. Thank you. It's in using your words, I decided not to give my clients faster horses. That means even better fancy structure of streams and teams,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
tribes, but tell them, look, let's use the car. That's different. It's even more affordable because this stuff you have implemented within 3 weeks. That's it. You don't need any special tooling. You don't need any special certification, nothing. You just cut
yeah,
the old meeting structure and get this one.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah. I have I have two strategy cases that I started coming back to. Um, okay, we have to be conscious of time, but I'm basically using the case of Lego, the Danish toy manufacturer, and Nokia, my former employer, who used to do mobile phones.
Mhm,
And Lego had a life-threatening crisis back in the zeros, because they started to do clothes and theme parks and whatever. So they basically diversified to a level where they couldn't cope anymore. And they hired some clever consultants who, after some time, told them that you have to do Lego. So they went back to just doing Lego and has been doing amazingly fine since then. The Nokia case is a bit different. So Nokia's mission was connecting people, and there is still a very prosperous network business today. But the way the broader public remember Nokia was as a mobile phone company that ended up like a blockbuster. But their mission or our mission was connecting people, which is basically getting the internet in the pocket of everyone. But then as you managed to get the internet into the pockets of everyone, there was a new business opportunity emerging. You could get money out of those pockets too, which was the app ecosystem that especially Apple became so famous from doing. But the thing is that none of the strengths that helped Nokia install internet in a lot of pockets in the world were helpful for getting money out of those pockets. So there was like literally none of the strengths that they had that would be useful for the shift in the market. So in that sense, I think it also represents a case where it's just a strategic impossibility to be the one who prosper from the next evolution simply because your strengths are not the strengths that you need. So Lego could do it because they were told to just do Lego, right? That's the perfect pivot back to what you're strong at. But for Nokia, the market pivoted away for anything they were good at, and they somehow floundered in the process of pursuing that. That's the strategy part.
Yeah, you get a point.
Vladimir, thank you so much. I guess we are on time. Is there anything we can do for you, or anything I can do for you?
Look, guys, no, I invite all of you to challenge statements I declared today or tonight. I invite you to find all those mistakes in reasoning behind the right people framework, because I think this has to grow on. It is still quite a young baby, and I hope you will get some inspiration out of the 60 minutes. And it would be
Absolutely.
great to connect up maybe later on. It doesn't matter in which context.
Yeah, and we discussed a bit about it before the recording. So I'd love to have this conversation with it. Could the sort of open community that we are trying to set up around the idea of liquid agility, could that be something useful for you to further evolve this? But let's connect about that after Christmas. Vladimir, thank you so much for taking time, and everyone have a nice end of the year, and hopefully we will meet on the other side. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the stage, guys. Have a nice Christmas.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.